Welcome. I'm Captain Wheeler from the Office of Emergency Services, and this is Captain Don Nicholson, also from the Office of Emergency Services. And this is the third of a series of 4 workshops. This one will be focusing on evacuation and the wildland-urban interface. And if you have any questions, please raise your hand. I think you'll all be muted. But we will try our best to answer any questions you might have. We also have Chief Garrett Contreras and Chief Eric Vollmer, Deputy Chief Eric Vollmer, along with us. And so we're really glad that you showed up. So today we're going to talk about a few things. I assume you can see our agenda on the screen. We'd like to talk a little bit about the different types of hazards with a focus on the urban interface, and also talk a little bit about, my screen's blocked, weather and how that will affect us, and then the different alerting systems, and talk a little bit about the levels of evacuation, and talk about the evacuation zones and preparing for evacuation, how to get ready, get set, and to go. And then when to evacuate, and we'll talk a little bit about some of the drills and things that we have upcoming. Turn it over to Don.
You can advance the slide. That's you.
Let me talk a little about this one. So let's talk a little about some of the potential hazards that we could have in the city of Hayward. There's natural hazards like fires or earthquakes or thunderstorms or floods. There's also man-made disasters like a terrorism attack or a hazmat spill that would cause a cloud that would be dangerous, and we might have to evacuate. So we are an all hazards department. We're ready for everything. We try to be ready for everything and try to forecast what might happen and develop a plan for that. And so today we'll talk a little bit about how we would react to some of the more likely situations, especially this time of year.
Okay, you can advance the slide. All right, so what our main focus is the wildland-urban interface. So maybe you've heard of that before. If you're in this meeting, you probably live there. We shorten it, we call it the WUI. So that stands for Wildland-Urban Interface. So what is the wildland-urban interface? What that is when we build houses close to natural environment that has fuels like wildland, grasslands or forests. So what that does is it poses a couple problems. And what this video series is really focusing on is the accountability of everybody that lives in the wildland-urban interface to take some responsibility and know when there's the alerts and stuff, the red flag warnings that we're currently in right now, and that's what this workshop is going to focus on. So we're going to cover that in later slides. So what is the wildland-urban interface? What kind of hazards does that pose on everyone? Is that we have more fires that start because of human ignition, and that we also have more valuable things that we have to protect. So, human life and that of, your homes and your property and stuff. So you can advance the slide. That's you, Paul.
So let's talk a little bit about what are some of the factors that would affect a red flag. Maybe you've heard that term, red flag warning. And what that means is there's conditions that are more likely to cause a fire to get out of control quickly. So one of them would be low RH or relative humidity or the moisture content in the fuels. And we watch that very closely because that will affect how fast the fire spreads. Strong wind is another huge factor that would affect a fire. It's not uncommon on a windy day for an area the size of a football field to light up within a minute. And so it's very important that we watch closely to catch these things as early as possible. Another thing would be dry fuels. So if we're in a drought, if it's late in the season, then the fuels have a tendency to dry out, which will cause it to spread. Lightning's another factor, especially up in the mountains. And it's very common every year to have thousands of lightning strikes. And sometimes a storm will come through and there'll be lightning strikes all over, and these fires will eventually burn together if we can't get to them before they spread. So any combination of any of those would cause a red flag warning. And it's unusual that we're in a red flag warning. The season seems to be longer and longer. So it's a little early from traditionally, but the red flag warning that we're in now is just got extended through tomorrow afternoon. And so it's important that we think about that. The other factor, or the other element of that, would be public safety power shutdowns. And that, of course, has stemmed from some of the other fires where PG&E's equipment has caused a fire, and they want to reduce those hazards. They'll shut off the power in an area to reduce the potential for wind to hit wires together or something that would cause a fire in these extreme conditions.
You can advance the slide. All right, now we'll talk about weather warnings and alerting systems. So here in Hayward, what we have in place is we have a fire station on Hayward Boulevard. That's fire station number 5. The duty captain on shift monitors the weather at least 3 times a day, looking for any severe weather conditions that could contribute to fire spread rapidly. So a red flag warning, like Captain Wheeler just said, is in effect until tomorrow at 6 p.m. And we're gonna explain later on how to be more aware of when these conditions occur. So a red flag warning is issued when fire weather conditions could worsen in the next 12 to 72 hours. All fire stations in Hayward and Fairview will fly red flags, as you see in the picture there that says fire weather. So the other thing is fire crews are strategically pre-positioned. So what that means is if it's a vulnerable or a susceptible day to cause to be a fire hazard, we will pre-position apparatus to be able to respond a lot quicker. And I think the next slide will cover what pre-positioning is, because we have a couple different things to cover. So go ahead.
So here's a picture of an actual pre-position. That's the type 3 type engine. That's an off-road fire engine that is based in the Fairview Fire Station. So on a day where it's has a higher potential for a fire, then we'll put fire apparatus like this and crews, in addition to the crews that we normally have on duty, and we'll put them in the most vulnerable areas. And they'll watch closely for smoke, they'll monitor the weather, they'll monitor the wind, and they'll be able to get to a fire much quicker and be able to stop the fire before it gets out of control. So that's proven to be very successful.
Okay, you can go back a slide. There we go. Okay, what to do when red flag warning is issued. There's certain things that you can do to make sure that you are well prepared to evacuate if need be. If you're not prepared to do that, if you don't have that in your mind at all, it's going to take a long time. Just think about how long it would take for you to accumulate all the stuff that you think is valuable, because in people's lives, a lot of stuff is valuable. But what we have to be concerned with is life safety over everything. Okay, so make sure you get out and you stay out, and you don't have a tendency to go back to get something that you might have forgotten. So some things that we can do: you could park your vehicle in the driveway facing out in anticipation of evacuation. Preload your vehicle with go bags, first aid kit, keepsake items, water, first aid kit. Oh, sorry, I already said that. Things of that nature that are essential, that's going to help you survive if you do have to evacuate. So plan to evacuate before mandatory order is issued. So if you got an evacuation warning, what this would do is, say, get you prepared to evacuate when the order came. But if you have, if you have mobility issues or if you think about it, if you evacuate early, you're going to be avoiding the traffic, and the conditions are probably going to be a lot better than waiting until an evacuation order is in effect. So the other thing is take only one vehicle per household to help reduce traffic. This is one of those things where you're thinking about others, not to take all 4 of your vehicles if you have 4 vehicles to clog up the roadway, because we're going to be showing you a video pretty soon of what it could look like in the event of an evacuation. Let's see. Another thing is always keep your keys in your pocket when the conditions are right for an extreme fire, so that you never have to go throughout your house looking for them. So you always have them in your pocket. You can advance.
This is neat.
Yeah.
So living in the wildland urban interface comes with a lot of responsibilities. You're required to watch a little closer. You need to pay attention a little bit more. And so there's several factors to watch. The weather, of course, is a big thing, and there are different warnings that we put out. We'll talk a little bit about the different levels of warning and the different systems that the county has for alerting people as soon as possible. So we do our best to monitor all the social media outlets, and the Alameda County has something called AC Alert, and that's probably the most important thing you can do. You can sign on to AC Alert or opt in, and when there is something that is major and very important, you will get contacted automatically through this new system that's been built. It would be either a text message, a phone call, an email, really whatever you prefer. And it will go on to the different methods of contacting you depending on if you answer that device or not. And so if it doesn't, you don't pick up your phone, it'll send you a text. But we'll talk a little bit more about that, because that's probably the most important thing you could do as far as awareness and finding out what's going on.
I want to talk on this a little bit, because I think the slide got advanced. I think you were supposed to talk about prepositioning, but sorry. The other thing that we want to be responsible for knowing what the conditions are. So some of the things that you can do, I know some of you might not be on social media, some of you are, but if you're on Twitter, that's a great source of information. So here, the Hayward Fire Department, we have our own Twitter account. It's called Hayward Fire News. So if you follow that, we don't, and then if you follow that, as well as the National Weather Service Bay Area, they send out red flag alerts well in advance. They have all the technology to do that. That's what they do, and they get that information out through Twitter. So when there's something that's coming, I do the social media for the fire department. So I'll put that on Hayward Fire News on Twitter. So the goal is to let as many people as possible know about it. So if you are on Twitter, if you go to the user profile, the icon, it should be on the left-hand side. If you click on that, and then you'll see a little bell with a plus sign, that is for notifications. So if you click on that, you're basically subscribing to the Twitter feed. And when you do that, every time we post something, you get a notification. So in doing that, that is showing responsibility for the upcoming, extreme fire weather that we could be having. And, it would kind of start the ball rolling for you to be prepared about that. Okay. So The other thing is weather.gov, that's the National Weather Service. The other one is if you're not on Twitter, but you're on Facebook, on Hayward Fire News, follow that account. And I do it kind of redundant. You know, I'll post on Twitter, and then I'll also post on Facebook. So I know some people don't have all the social media, they only have certain ones. So, you know, I try to, or I do keep all that up. So another thing is local media, you know, watching the news or your radio, listening to your radio. But the biggest thing is AC alert, like Captain Wheeler was talking about. So, you know, you can sign up for AC alert, and if you live in Hayward or Fairview, but say you work in Pleasanton, you can sign up for both locations. So if you're at work and something happens in Pleasanton, you'll get notified. And the way they notify you is a redundant system there as well, is they text, email, and they call you, they call your landline, they call your cell phone, and it won't stop until you confirm that you have received it. So, you know, right when you get the message, there was just one that went out for a red flag warning for the current situation that we have. And, you know, when I got it, I put confirmed, you know, typed in Y for yes, and they stopped sending me information. So that's basically their clarification that you received the message. Okay, so the way to sign up for that, you can go to our website, which is hayward-ca.gov /AC-alert. Also, you can go to acalert.org. Yeah, acalert.org. And the parent company is called Everbridge. So if you type that in and you see Everbridge, that's actually AC Alert. So, and like Captain Wheeler was saying, throughout Alameda County, that's our mass notification system. And we're not going to send you messages saying there's a parade in town, come join us or something. It's for emergency purposes only. Okay, you can advance the slide. Okay, so when fire is approaching, so, you know, I talked about evacuating early at the warning. If there's an evacuation warning, say a fire is coming, it's, you know, a couple miles away, and, you know, conditions on the fire ground can actually change really, really rapidly. So, you know, change in the wind direction, you know, could cause that fire to push that fire to communities, neighborhoods, you know, to where, you know, where your residence is. So being able to evacuate early, like I said, you know, the traffic's going to be lighter and the conditions are going to be a lot better usually than you know, waiting until an evacuation order. Let's see, if smoke is really heavy, I know that we would get calls for a dispatch center when there's a fire, like, you know, far away, and, you know, why is there so much smoke in the Hayward Hills? Smoke travels, you know, pretty long distances. So if you imagine a fire that's, you know, a lot closer, there's going to be a lot of smoke. So, you know, make sure you have the N95 masks at your disposal and in your kits, which we will be talking about pretty soon. Another way to prepare if a fire, you know, is coming to you, to your house, or in that direction, is to turn off your propane tanks. You know, in our previous workshops, we talked about defensible space, and, you know, hopefully everyone saw that presentation that's on today and started doing a little bit of work to their house, you know, actually a lot of work if need be, and prepare for, you know, this wildland season. So remove any fuels near your house if you know, if the fire is approaching, if you have time. But like I said, evacuate early and avoid the traffic and, you know, anything that could be a catastrophic, you know, event, you know, if the fire decided to, you know, make a run across the road or something like that. So if you are in those kind of conditions, you want to wear, you know, long sleeves, preferably 100% cotton or wool, not like, you know, lycra, the dry fit stuff, that kind of stuff that could actually melt. And you don't want to To dispel a rumor, you don't want to wet yourself, with water to kind of absorb the heat, because that could actually cause steam burns. So the next slide.
So the city of Hayward has gained a lot of experience over the past few years. I remember my first fire was the Oakland Hills fire. And at the time they said, the other firefighters said, you'll never go to a fire this big again. This is a career fire. They'll never be this big again. And now I think the Oakland Hills fire is probably ranked number 8. We've had so many big fires. And the city, through the mutual aid program, has sent crews to, I think, every one of them. And the decision to evacuate for a fire or for some big incident is never taken lightly. All factors are considered, and it's usually a joint command with police and fire, and the decision is made how to evacuate and where to evacuate. And it's based on several things: how fast it's spreading, or the magnitude of it, or the intensity of the plume of a hazardous materials, or how long it's potentially going to last, because that will affect if it's even a good idea to evacuate people. So all of that is in consideration, and they factor in how many people actually need to go and how long it's going to take, because we know that it takes longer than you would think. And then how far would they have to go to get to a safe area? So all of that is factored in and considered, and we take it very serious. Next slide. So you've heard of evacuation, and there's a little confusion about what an evacuation, what it means, the message that you hear. So there's kind of different levels based on the severity of it. So there's an advisory, or sometimes it would be considered a pre-advisory. So that would be a heads up for you. There's a fire going on. We have crews on scene. You might smell smoke, but we just want you to know that this is taking place, and to be aware of that and to pay attention. Evacuation warning would be that there's an actual threat and that there's a concern. And if you have some reason why it would take you longer to evacuate, maybe you might have some access and functional needs, or large animals or something like that, that would be a good time to start leaving. And when there's a big incident and a lot of people evacuating, the people that get on the road the fastest are the ones who usually get out best, and they usually get to drive out where others might have to walk. An evacuation order is really a very serious thing. That means there's an immediate threat of life, and you'll hear police cars and fire engines, maybe public address system. You'll know that it's serious and it's time to leave right then. And unfortunately, there are people that have ignored those orders and maybe gathered some of their materials and then didn't have enough time to actually evacuate. And those are very sad situations. So we take it very serious, and it's very important. When you're asked to evacuate, please get out as fast as you can and make sure that you take one car and do the best to evacuate whoever you might have around you. You might want to notify your neighbors if they didn't hear that, or somebody else. And also remember your pets. So another option would be to shelter in place. So it might be that that's the best decision, to leave people where they're at, let the emergency blow over. They're safer in their house than in a car, or they're safer indoors than outdoors. And so sometimes you'll hear a shelter in place order, and that's another good strategy that's an option. So one of the most famous fires is of course the Camp Fire, which happened in Paradise, California. And I remember that day I just got off work and it was a Thursday morning in November. And you would think November, it's almost the holidays, we're fine. And I remember when that went out, and I had the opportunity to respond up there the next day, and then to help some people that were actually looking for loved ones. And we have a video that we'd like to show you that I think gives the best feeling of what an evacuation would feel like. And maybe you've seen this, but I think it's good to review. It's real short. This is at approximately noon, and it was so dark, everybody had their lights on. There was fire on both sides of the road. What was normally maybe a 10 or 15-minute drive to Chico from the town of Paradise, that's where my wife grew up, was more like a 4-hour trip down there. And some of the people up in the higher areas in Magalia and back a little bit higher up on the hill were very lucky to get out. And it's because they had a plan, and they had talked about it and practiced the plan in the community. So there's really just 2 roads that go out of Paradise. And at the end, when the traffic got really bad, then they ended up having to push vehicles off the road with a bulldozer to make room for the firefighting crews to get through. So that was a terrible situation, but also a great blessing that more people didn't die and weren't affected. So we'd like to talk a little bit about evacuation in Alameda County. So let's, it looks like that slide, well, let's try to run it. Seems like we're having some internet problems. But there's a lot of these. I understand they're looking at making a feature film about that because of some of the amazing stories of people fleeing for their life. You could see the next day, there were still things burning, how the wind pushed the fire into different areas. And so some neighborhoods were not affected at all, and other neighborhoods were completely devastated. And this is right as you come out of or off the hill of Paradise. And what a great feeling to get out of that smoke and that heat. So Alameda County is made up of approximately 13 different jurisdictions. And we're all kind of together. We all butt up against one another. And so if you evacuate one area, you might affect the neighboring area. You don't want to evacuate our people into an area that they're trying to evacuate. And so we realize that it's important that we have a plan that works good for everybody, that we can collaborate on. And so for a while now, there's been a work group, especially dedicated to this problem. And so the Alameda County is now divided up into over 1,000 zones. And they're designed to be able to, it's kind of like a little neighborhood. And then those zones would have different plans to evacuate each of the different zones. So let's go on and talk a little bit about that some more on the next slide. So the company that came up with the zones and helped us with this is called Zone Haven, and it's specifically designed just for that. And they're doing this all over the Bay Area. It was very successful in the CZU fire that happened last year. They had zones and they had plans, and they were able to be very efficient. So the tools that this provides for us is, first of all, consistent messaging so that everybody knows what we're talking about. When we identify a zone, all of the first responders know exactly where that zone is at and what is meant by that. We've identified multiple route options and thought those through before the incident. And then this allows us to coordinate, like I mentioned, with our neighboring jurisdictions. and figure out the most efficient flow of traffic. So imagine if you just put out a general message and said, everybody evacuate. The roads are already pretty backed up on a busy day, on a rush hour. And if you evacuate all the zones at the same time, or the whole area, or evacuate areas that would be unnecessary based on the information that is in the incident command post, then it just clogs up the roads. And so you have to come up with a very efficient way. And so the zones will be evacuated based on traffic flow, based on how fast the incident is developing, and what zones would be affected first. And so all that is thought out real well. And then we'll talk a lot about knowing your zone and knowing what zone you're in, and practicing which way you get out. But the idea is that you might not be able to go where you think you want to go. You might not be able to get onto the freeway, for example. So there'll be pre-designated temporary evacuation areas where it's going to be safe for you to be, but it's not going to clog up the rest of the major arteries. And so we'll talk more about that. And also, this will all be fully integrated with the public alert system. So as a incident develops and the zones are identified, the software will automatically send a notification to Waze, for example, and will update Waze, and so that people will be rerouted around the affected area. It will also be tied in with social media, and you'll be able to see how that's going. The plan is, this is kind of an example page that shows what a zone would look like, and this would be available to all the first responders. So as we finish up all of the details and all of the zones, all of the things that would be affected, then this will get printed into a book and then placed in every first responder vehicle. And so that any first responder will be able to make intelligent decisions based on the pre-designated decisions and the evacuation plans for that zone. So let's go on to the next slide. So Hayward has approximately 92 zones right now, 92 different neighborhoods. And we've gone through, and this software also has different layers depending on the type of emergency. So we know the elevation, we know the weather, we know everything about the potential hazards that could be. So along our coastline, we know the tsunami inundation zones, and we have a plan for that, and we know where the water will be based on the type of tsunami, and we also have the ability to identify target hazards, maybe some facilities that are a little more critical evacuation facilities, like some of our board and care homes, or some of our schools or hospitals. And then we'll be able to identify the temporary evacuation areas depending on the type of emergency it is. Another great thing about this is we can click on one of those zones on any platform. It's all web-based, and it will tell the incident command team how many vehicles are in that zone, how many houses are in that zone, how many people expected any time of day. There's some areas have more people during the day than at night. And we can also simulate fires or incidents based on even the historical weather data. So this example right here was based on a fire that happened years ago. And we looked up the date and we looked up the time of day, and then we were able to simulate exactly how that fire will go. And so the yellow would be the first half hour, and the orange the next hour, and then if it continues unchecked, it goes on to the red. And so we can click these different zones and then automatically identify how many people are there, the evacuation points, and then have an ability to contact the individuals that live in that area. So let's go on to the next slide.
Okay, be ready. This is a picture of our fire engine that is from the Office of Emergency Services. You see the OES on the back. So Hayward firefighters staff that engine, and we assist in the mutual aid system all over the state of California. So I'm not sure which fire this is at, but this is obviously at an actual fire. So some things that we could, the other thing I wanted to point out is because we send out firefighters to different fires all over the state, rest assured that we don't send out all of our firefighters so that we can't handle incidents here in Hayward and Fairview. So we always have enough staff and resources, apparatus and so forth to handle all the local emergencies. So wanted to clarify that. Some things that we can do to be ready. One of the things is, you've heard this before, is a go kit. Okay. The whole next hour and a half hour that we have, we could talk about this. What to put in your go kit, what's essential, what's non-essential, what's a good idea, what's necessary. But what we're going to do is refer you to our website. So again, that's hayward-ca.gov. The fire department is on the top left. You click on that, you go to disaster preparedness, and there's a list, okay, of good ideas what to put in your go kit. Okay, so what we suggest is to have 3 go kits for each member of your household. Okay, well, depending on the age of the individual, but if you have kids, obviously they don't need a go kit for work. You could maybe get one for school. So what we suggest is one for home, one for work, and one for your car, because you never know where you're going to be at when a disaster strikes. Okay, that covers everything from fires to earthquakes, you name it. Okay, so we always want to be prepared. So in your home, that go kit is going to be in a conspicuous place, somewhere where you're not going to forget it, right there by the front door, that you could just grab and go and get out of the area. The one in your car is not going to be in a conspicuous place, because that's what thieves look for, is backpacks in your car. So don't do that, put that in your trunk. Also want to keep those out of direct sunlight if you can, because the things inside can get hot, they can go bad on you and stuff like that. So you want to basically pack things that are essential, that you can survive for 24 hours on. All right, obviously we need water. We always recommend 1 gallon of water per person per day. Okay, so in your vehicle, it's always a good idea to keep water, extra bottles of water. Okay, in your go kit, in a bag, you're probably going to get something smaller, because I don't think you're going to carry a whole gallon of water in a backpack. But you can get like a pint of water. REI, Dick's Sporting Goods, they sell those camping water containers that the water doesn't, it lasts a lot longer. So some essential items, just to talk about are some non-perishable food, a flashlight, because if it gets dark, you're going to need light, obviously. First aid kit's very, very important, because if you get injured, who's going to be there to take care of you? You need to take care of yourself. Okay. Another good item is a hand cranked radio. What those do is, if you power those up, it provides a car charger, a flashlight, and obviously a radio, so you can listen to communication. So other thing is a hard copy of local maps. So we're talking about technology, Waze. If you don't know what Waze is an app for all those commuters. If you're a commuter, you know what Waze is, because it tells you which way is the best route to take. So if that's not readily available, you have hard copies of maps, then you can always refer to those. Those don't you can always rely on those. The other thing is your pets. Okay, so if you have a dog, cat, whatever you have, those are part of the dog or cat. I have dogs, part of my family. I would absolutely be devastated if something happened to them. I'm sure you would too. So what we're going to do is we're going to prepare a go kit for them as well. So in that, you're going to have essential things, like food and water, a bowl for them, because if you're, stranded on the side of the road or whatever the case may be, you're in a temporary evacuation area, you're going to have something to contain the water so they can drink out of it. All right. Medicines, if your pets take medicine, make sure you pack that with you as well. The other thing is crating animals or your pets. So if you think about this, if you're driving through like what that video showed you, do you think your animals are going to be very anxious and acting up and causing confusion to you while you're trying to get out of there in a high stress situation? If you put them in a crate, they're in a controlled environment. And also, if you have to go to a shelter, a lot of the shelters will require pets to be crated. Okay, so make sure you if you're able to bring a crate, if you can fit it in your car or your truck, then do that. Okay, you can change the slide. All right, so now we're going to talk about how to evacuate. The only thing wrong with this picture is it's facing towards towards the house. Okay, one of the things that we're going to talk about is taking that car and facing it around, so you have one less thing to think about. You don't have to back up into a busy street. You can just drive out and get out of there. Okay, you see the car is loaded up with essential items, packed really well. So that's the goal there. You want to take the most essential things. What you could do is, if you have documents, your social security cards and things like that, if you put them in a binder, a wedding license or certificate, whatever that's called, birth certificates, home owners insurance policies, things like that. If you put them in a binder, in one spot, that's easy to grab and take, instead of searching throughout the house looking for this and that when you need to get out in a hurry. The other thing is to take photos of those and put them on a small thumb drive. Okay, so that's some of the things you can do. When you leave, close all your doors and windows and vents, and that prevents drafts that could help save your home if the fire gets close to your house. So leave driveway gates open if you live in a gated at a gated residence. And what that does is allows emergency crews to get in there without having to take time to cut the chain or the lock to get inside, so we can get in there a lot quicker. Drive cautiously out of the area. You saw in the video, I think the person was doing a pretty adequate job of functioning during a really stressful, high stress incident. So you want to make sure that you're able to get out carefully. So drive carefully, not speeding and really panicky. So I know it's hard, but try to focus on that. And if you can, get out of the area. If you don't have to go to a temporary evacuation area, if you can, straight shot to get out of there, get out of there. One of the things that we want to make sure of is that we don't encounter, or if we do encounter down power lines, that we make sure that we don't touch those. We treat those as everything is live, okay? We do that in the fire ground. If there's a cable wire, we treat it as live until we prove it's not. So make sure you don't drive over power lines, touch power lines, basically. And you can advance the slide. Help. Okay, if you're trapped, Captain Wheeler was talking about if you have to shelter in place. So if you have to evacuate and you couldn't get out and you needed to shelter in place, you have to make sure that you're able to notify somebody that you're still trapped in your house. Okay, so we use that kind of as a last resort if we're trapped and we have nowhere else to go. some things that you can do. Make sure that you stay together, your family stays together. You don't want, any family member to leave and then you're staying in the house. You want to stay together. Stay in your home, keep all doors and windows closed, but keep them unlocked so that emergency personnel, law enforcement can get in and to assist you. If you have flammable drapes or curtains, you want to make sure you pull those out of the way or pull them off the wall, get them away from the window so that the radiant heat doesn't catch those on fire and catch the interior of your home on fire. Put a large help sign in the front window. That would be an indicator for fire crews and law enforcement to to go in there and get anybody that's trapped out of the house. Keep calm. Remember that it's 4 to 5 times hotter outside than it is inside. So, if you're tempted to leave your house, then remember that it's a lot hotter out there. If you're trapped in your vehicle, like so, if you're evacuating, like the person was in the video, and you come to a place where that you're trapped. Try to find a place that's clear of vegetation. It's kind of like an earthquake. You want to go to a place that is clear, doesn't have anything that can fall over on top of you, like a down power line, a falling tree, and clear of fuels. So if the weeds are this high, that's not a good place to go. So try to get to a clear spot where maybe there's grass or something like that that's green. So that's some place that you can go to be safer. But the idea of the ideal of evacuating early shouldn't even be a concern, because if you evacuate early, then you won't have to deal with getting trapped. Okay, so hopefully you take all the advice from this, and anytime that there's an evacuation warning, you go ahead and evacuate. Okay, before there's an actual order to evacuate. If you are trapped in your vehicle, one of the things that I found is if you take like your sunshade that goes on your windshield, to prevent like your car from getting hot or the dashboard from cracking from the sun, put that up. That deflects the radiant heat. Try to get on your floorboard if possible. And then if you're trapped on foot, same thing there. Try to find an open space, clear of fuels, clear of falling debris. And just remember that there's going to be a lot of smoke. So make sure that you pack that N95 mask to help you filter out all the smoke. Okay, you can advance the slide. Okay, this slide, we're going to be talking about evacuation preparedness. Okay, we talked a little bit about go kits. What I always suggest to people is build a go kit from basically from the ground up, if you will. Buy a backpack and start storing the things that is customizable to your needs. Okay, so like say if you take medication or you take vitamins or something like that, that make you feel better. Pack those in there, eyeglasses, things of that nature. And like I said earlier, we could talk about this for the rest of the workshop, but you see on the bottom there the links to our disaster preparedness site. So customize it, buy a little bit at a time, but make sure you have a go kit or a go bag that's accessible, at home, work, and in your car. Okay. The other thing is go kits they do not last forever. So every year, what you should do is maintain those. Make sure that you have your needs change. Now you didn't wear glasses before, now you do. So pack some glasses in there. So every year go through it, make sure everything is up to par. Communication. What we're trying to do here is stay off the phone lines because that jam packs the communication system, right? So if everybody's on the phone making phone calls, you're going to have trouble getting out. So what we're going to suggest is texting people. So and do not send pictures. I know it's going to be challenging. This is what's going on. You send a picture of the fire that actually clogs up the communication lines as well. So what we want to do is just text and stay off the phone. What we always suggest is getting a hold of somebody that is out of the area, or what we call an out-of-state contact person. So that say you are evacuating and your son or daughter is out of the area, and you want to tell them that you're okay, use the out-of-state contact person, and then they can check in as well. So and update them when you evacuate and then when you're safe in the safe zone. Okay, so make sure you so that nobody is coming to look for you. And if report any found persons who were reported missing, so if you couldn't get a hold of somebody and you think that they're in their, didn't evacuate or whatever, and you find them to be safe, make sure you let somebody know about that. The next thing we'll talk about is neighbors. So as a community, what we're trying to do is build relationships here, okay? And it takes everybody, help from everybody to successfly be prepared in your community, in your neighborhood. So people that might need help, and we'll get to that on the next topic, is access and functional needs. So people with mobility issues, developmental, cognitive, hearing, or language issues, we need to take care of those people that are in need, that may need help evacuating. So that's what we could do as neighbors, knowing their schedules, knowing your neighbors' schedules. If they go on vacation or something like that, know that they're not going to be there to assist you if you need assistance. Make sure there's a lot of redundancy in that, so that if so-and-so is out of town, your other neighbor is going to take care of you, if you need assistance, or you're going to provide assistance to somebody that needs help. Okay, and that applies to children as well. Select a neighborhood block captain. So somebody that's going to take charge. We get this a lot, and I've been to a lot of neighborhood meetings, homeowners association meetings and things like that, where we talk about disaster preparedness. So someone needs to take that on and communicate, organize something within your neighborhood, and and seek out training opportunities. And we'll get to that in a second. Let's see, I already talked about access and functional needs. Pets. So we talked a little bit about pets, having their own go bag. Make sure you bring leashes, water dishes, medications. That I kind of already talked about that. But if there's smoke outside, like I said earlier, when there's fires that are far away and we get a lot of smoke here, make sure that your pets are inside, okay? Because the pets can't wear the masks and stuff like that, okay? So keep a collar on your pet with an ID tag. And if possible, have your pet microchip so you can find them wherever they're at. If you do happen to lose them in, during an evacuation or after an evacuation. Also have photos of your pets. I know everyone does. Have one with you and your pet so that you can, it would be easily identifiable that is your dog or cat or whatever. For larger animals, make sure that you have a plan in place that can get those animals like horses, transported out of the area and into a safe zone. Okay. One of the key points here is if you must leave without your pets, leave gates and downwind windows open. So if the fire is approaching from this way, leave this window open so that, you know, if the animal is, you can't find it and you need to evacuate to save your life, give them a fighting chance to get out. So, and then don't open the fire window that's closest to the fire because that's going to introduce heat and embers and things like that into your house. So try to take your pets with you, but don't become a fatality when trying to save them. You know, I'm sure you've heard of different people, you know, going back to get their house, whether it's just a house fire or it's an actual wildland fire. People have, you know, risked their lives and actually, you know, perished in these fires for trying to go back and get their animals. So remember, your life is the most important. Okay. All right, next slide. I think that's you.
So we want to talk a little bit about some questions. We see that there's some questions. We just can't see what the questions are. So if someone has a question about any of this, this would be a good time. Maybe we can. Does anybody have a question that we haven't answered yet?
I think these are old. Yeah.
Okay. All right, let's go on. So we know that Don and I have been doing this a long time, and we know now that if you don't act on this plan tonight or within the next 24 hours, the chances that you're going to prepare drop off dramatically. So it's important to take the opportunity while you're thinking about that to prepare. So you've signed up for AC alert, and so you're going to get notified. You have a backup battery for your phone. You've put together your go kit. You have taped a checklist of the things that you want to do and bring inside the cabinet where the cookie jar is, so you look at it often. You've picked a designated contact person. And really the best thing to do after you've got that in place is the best practice is to actually practice. So think about the different scenarios. Involve your family, involve your kids. Emergencies have a tendency to come at inconvenient times. If your kids are at school and your spouse is at work or your in-laws are in town and you know, whatever the scenario is, try to think all those through and talk it through and have each member of the family understand the plan. And so that will relieve a lot of anxiety. There's a good chance that if an area has been evacuated, you won't be able to go in and look for somebody. So that's the beauty of having an established meeting place and an established out-of-area contact. And you can tell that we could really talk for days about this, but we'll try to move it on a little faster. So explore different routes out of your neighborhood. If one route is blocked with down wires, have a second plan that you've explored on a beautiful day instead of during an emergency. So along with you practicing this, the city and all the first responders are going to practice as well. So we are going to continue ongoing development and some degree of tests with the notification systems. We want to make sure that they work. We just don't want to wear out the message. We want it to be functioning, but not become common. We'll do internal tabletop exercises where we discuss with the different departments throughout the city, different scenarios where we plan and discuss the best and most efficient way to execute an evacuation. We're going to do some public address drills where we actually will send out a message and ask that the people that get the message actually do something. Maybe you can test your system and how long it takes you to get your family and your puppy into the car with your go bags and get down to a specific spot. So we'll have these ongoing drills, and we're working on that throughout the rest of this year and moving forward. And there's also going to be a big advertising campaign to discuss know your zone. And so we want you to know which zone is yours, where to go to find information on your zone, and know the best ways out of your zone. So we have that going on, and we know we're short on time, but we'll change the slide and put up the address again to AC Alert. This is the first step to be notified of what's happening. This is a system that has all been established, tested, and we really want you to opt into that and encourage your neighbors to opt into that as well. So is there any questions that we haven't covered? We'll just leave that up for a minute so you can write that down. And it looks like there's a bunch of questions. Okay, let's see if we can do that.
I'm going to unmute some participants to let them ask their question.
You got that?
Let's see, I tried raising my hand. Curious how specific egress routes produced by Zone Haven. Oh, okay. So the routes and the traffic control points are really going to be developed by people in-house. So they give us the tools to be able to indicate where they'll be on the map, a wealth of advice and experience that they can bring, but the little idiosyncrasies of each of the different neighborhoods will all be reviewed carefully and indicated by police and fire and everybody that's involved. Different scenarios will have different exit plans, of course. So if the wind is blowing out of the east, we want you to exit a different way. So there's not going to be necessarily a set plan for every neighborhood, because it could change. Some neighborhoods only have one way out and may have some emergency evacuation gates or EVAs, and we'll talk a little bit more about that too. So let's see. You want to talk about gas cans?
Sure. What should we do with gas cans, propane tanks prior to evacuation, placed in a certain spot? Yeah, you want to make sure that you get those away from your home as much as possible. I know some of you might live in a community, and some are in more rural areas. What I would suggest is getting those away from your house, as far away as possible, so that because if they were right next to your house, that's going to be one of the first things to cause the fire to spread really rapidly.
Okay, let me take this one. So the question is, would you prefer a sign if you have a pool in your backyard so that we can draft out of that water? We have a great water delivery system. If there is a need for helicopters to dip out of pools, we've seen that happen, and they're very talented. They can see the pools from above, and we also have Google Maps and Google Earth and all the tools. So probably not that necessary. A lot of pools we can't access because if we're going to draft water straight out of the pool right into a fire engine, it makes it very difficult unless we can get very close. So one thing that is helpful is if you have evacuated, you could put a sign on your house that says evacuated, and so that the first responders don't have to go door to door in every case. That time is going to be critical. And if we can save time by eliminating the houses that have been evacuated, that gives us more time to focus on maybe someone with special needs.
There are several gates in our community that could be open, but we are unclear what the interdepartmental communication is to open those gates when an emergency arises. You have that answer? So
these are probably gates that you don't even notice. Maybe at the end of a street, there's a gate and then a little road that goes off. They call those EVAs, or emergency vehicle access gates, and we have them throughout the hills especially. And it allows us different access to different areas. And so some of those gates, all of the gates, we have a key that will open each of those gates. And so in the case of an emergency, any fire vehicle will be able to open those gates. There's a gate on Thurston Court, for example, and we realized that we might be busy in a fire. And so this particular gate is in the process of being converted so that it can be opened remotely, either by a remote control in a fire apparatus or even through dispatch. And that was a joint venture through the Hayward Fire Department, Fairview Fire Department, and Fairview Fire Protection District, and Alameda County. It's expensive to do that. You have to run power to it, but we're open to doing that as soon as we can possibly get funding, and those are being prioritized now. And there may be other ways that we can discuss in using some of our partners to find a way to get those open.
I think, did we hear correctly?
Oh, there's Thurston Court right there, yeah. So Thurston Court is not operational yet. We're still waiting for the final on the electricity. It's currently a chain, but it's in the process and they're working on it. Is that your understanding too?
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's see. With Fairview Avenue being just a 2-lane road and the fire is approaching from both sides of the road, as in the video shown, what is the best way to evacuate, such as stay in your vehicle or on foot? What I would suggest is trying to safely drive out of the area. I hope that answers your question, but that is the main goal, is to not get trapped. So, you know, that's shows you the importance of evacuating early. And, you know, taking everything into consideration, the fire weather, it's a red flag warning, be prepared. When you hear, you know, evacuation warning, you get out safely, and there's no delay whatsoever. So you don't have to encounter this situation. So that's basically the best scenario that we could suggest there, I think, unless you have something else.
Yeah, it's hard to know, you know, if you're stuck in traffic and the fire is all around your vehicle, maybe you're safer in the vehicle. We know from the Paradise Fire that some people stayed in their vehicle and were fine. Other people got out and did better out. It's going to be really difficult to know. I know that in general, it's going to be hot and terrible out there, and there'll be embers blowing like snowflakes at you. So if you can get out early, that's a much better plan, but it's difficult to know based on the conditions.
Fireworks have been increasing in the Fairview area. What are your thoughts? Is there any action being taken by the fire department? Every year I'm part of a campaign to get the word out via social media, mailers, everything you could think of, to let signs, road signs, the problem is there's neighboring cities that allow safe and sane fireworks. Everything in Hayward and Fairview is off limits, no fireworks whatsoever. So every year we try to get the word out, and unfortunately, we have people that, you know, just don't, you know, don't take the message seriously. And anytime there are fireworks, you know, we take that very seriously. But it's very hard to apprehend the people, give them citations, because, you know, they're lighting these fireworks that are going off in the air. And by the time, you know, the police department gets there, because the police and fire are having a crazy night. You can only imagine all the calls that they're getting, you know, close to the 4th of July. So trying to, you know, run down people, trying to, you know, confiscate their fireworks, you know, so it's a very difficult task. So, you know, please understand that, you know, we try our best every year. We have extra staffing. We put patrols up in the hills, patrols down in the flats, everywhere. We just have extra staff, and so does the police department. But it's just a very difficult task to problem to fix. So I hope that answered your question.
So ham radio, we would love to talk to you if you're a ham radio operator. We'd like to build that up again and learn a little bit more about that, how that works. We had a ham radio club that we worked with in the past, and I think that's been dissolved. So we would love to talk to you. Well, if you know anybody that is a ham radio operator, let us know. So. Do you want to switch off, or how do you want to do this?
I don't care.
You know what, I'm going to jump in, you guys. This is Chief Contreras. I'm going to try and move us along so that we can get to that presentation potentially that Ms. Richardson wanted us to take a look at. If we can, there's a few questions about specifics of evacuation, and part of the goal tonight was to preheat everybody, pardon the pun, but to preheat everybody a little bit on what Zone Haven is, because we're getting a lot of questions about evacuation. We've been working on this for 18 months, as has every fire department and police agency in the county, and we're just about ready to roll out. And we're at that point, come June 1, we're going to be able to talk about more specifics of the evacuations. You'll be able to download your own maps, and we'll be able to tabletop exercise with your community groups and what have you as we build the familiarity with the Zone Haven system. We're building it from scratch, and it is successfully being operated in 2 other counties, and I believe all 9 Bay Area counties are going to be on Zone Haven by the end of this fire season, but we're next in line for June 1st. The Hayward Boulevard thing has come up a lot. We have publicly stated that we're opposed to that narrowing of Hayward Boulevard, and we will continue in our opposition to that. It's just not a well thought out plan, and we've made that very clear that from an access and egress standpoint, we have concerns and have not been met with a great deal of resistance. Another question about the goats. The goats are coming in. Ward Creek, your Durham Road property, will be affected by where the goats will be. They will be here the first week of June. The different fire gates, we're going to be going through a series of evaluations of the existing EVAs and making proposals for any of those EVAs that can be electrified, using the Thurston Gate as the model. So Thurston and Lori Way, that was kind of a prototype. As soon as it gets powered up, then we will model the rest of the EVAs after that successful implementation. All the narrow areas and references to narrow streets, those are obviously geographical features of not just the Hayward Hills, but the Fairview area in general. And that's the reason why Zone Haven is going to be a huge solution for us to move towards establishing safety zones, and not necessarily if there are times of the day that fires happen where people, to the question of 49 homes in a single neighborhood, we may be identifying with the neighborhood of safety zones within the neighborhood and being aware of those things. And we're going to build that out with you all together. We're not going to make assumptions that we know all of your concerns. We're going to learn from these sessions with you. And if we need to do more workshops, we will continue to do workshops until the community at large feels like their questions have been answered. With that, we had a proposal with a lot of really good ideas, a very thoughtful approach. The Kelly Hill neighborhood, is most know, is in the Fairview district. And I think it's one example of the community coming together and attempting to solve a problem. And I think it's a problem that we've been working on, and now to partner with that community group to implement their ideas of what they want to see on the Kelly Hill neighborhood, and utilizing the technology we're bringing to bear is going to be very helpful. As far as the question about who implements an evacuation, so it's called for by the fire agencies and executed on by law enforcement. So the fire agencies are focused on suppression operations, and everyone else is focused on the evacuation process. So with that, if you are ready, Ms. Richardson, I think we can Shauna can share your screen and your presentation. Is that going to work, Shauna? Oh, there we go. And I believe Ms. Richardson has been unmuted. Or not. Cindy, are you there? Okay, we can't hear you. I see you in the chat. We can't hear you yet, Cindy. Shauna will work on that. Yes, the city, another question, when will the city have people doing we're on the city right now about Skyline and Skyline Drive. That's in process. That should have already been abated. So I'll add that to my list. I thought you were talking SkyWest Golf Course, which also needs to be abated now. We still can't hear Cindy.
Hey, Chief, I'm trying to find Miss Richardson. Did she call
Raise your
in?
hand.
She has her hand raised generally.
Well,
Oh, it's Cindy.
well, we're getting short on time. I was really hoping. Hand is raised. Someone can fill in for Cindy if she's not able to. Who is that education team? Do you see that as an option, Shauna? Sorry, everybody. We're usually pretty smooth with the Zoom.
Hello?
There we go.
Yes.
Oh, hi. Yeah. Thank you so much, Chief Contreras. You made this presentation almost not necessary. Kelly Hill has been extremely concerned about their predicament of having one access and entry to their area in case of fire. And we do have, and I'll just skip right through here. All of the things that we did not know about had not been announced that you are working on an evacuation plan. We did not know this. So we were trying to jumpstart one, basically. And we were getting very serious about getting an evacuation plan specifically for this dense part of Fairview, and especially Kelly Hill with its one entry and exit. And there are potentially 5 gates out, and they will happen if there's a real emergency because people will just plow over the gates, basically. But since we are living in, with potential fires every day, it's getting pretty critical that we have an evacuation route and the EVA gates are prepared. And we are certainly ready to jump in and help educate the public and get everybody on the same sheet of music. And we wanted to be all this to be done by July 4 because that is like D-Day for fireworks. And last year, we saw so many days like this, and there were a lot of acquaintances and myself who were kind of sweating it out every night as to what if there's a fire. Again, we heard about budgets and timeframes, but we didn't hear anything specific. So we tried to encourage getting the evacuation plan out right away. We have the resources and we can do this, and the information's there, and obviously you're aware of it anyway. And we had a final vision where the evacuation zones are set up, the escape routes are set up, the public knows what to do, and it's all tied into getting defensive perimeters and evacuation. It's together. And the process, there's a wealth of ways for people to inform each other, but basically we get a WA alert or call from family member, gather family, load vehicles, all the things that were covered today in this workshop, and then take established routes out. And then once that urgent part of evacuation is settled, then we can refine the process to include shelter and reentry. And again, this is with the hopes of just getting a evacuation plan started. And so going forward, I learned today that, this has been afoot for 18 months already. And so a lot of this pleading and urgency isn't necessary per se, but we do need something solid soon about Kelly Hill. And we did our own research, and there is a program that's up and running and really excellent. I think it was the county that inspired the law to have a defensive perimeter. But anyway, here's a link to their program, and that's all I have to say. And I thank you very much, though, for the engagement and preparation that I was heretofore not aware of.
Absolutely. Part of the reason, not that we were developing this in secret by any means, but it definitely took some time. When we originally had our concepts, working with another neighboring jurisdiction, it was quickly grabbed up by the rest of the agencies in the county, and we wanted to maintain consistency. So the delay was that, and then getting payment for the system from all of the jurisdictions was the next challenge, which we pulled our resources together and pulled that off. And we're funded now on Zone Haven indefinitely moving forward by all agency participation. So part of the goal wasn't to just pull something off the shelf per se, but to build something that is sustainable long-term, that's recognizable for generations to come. And I think we're going to accomplish that. But part of it is there is that anxiety. We are pushing up into fire season. So we appreciate it. And the work that your group did, Ms. Richardson, is exactly what we hope to see these meetings spur, is people working with neighbors to tell us your ideas, living in the neighborhood. No one knows it better than you do, even though we know the neighborhoods well. No one knows the tendencies and the ebbs and flow of the neighborhoods as well as you. And there's a lot of questions about, for instance, functional needs and people gaining access. Some of the questions in the chat about how to be made aware. And we hope that through this process, we're going to make sure that anybody who's willing and able has the information that they need to know their zone and what to do in a case of emergency. And in those situations that we can't evacuate because of a specific geographical trait of a neighborhood, we'll have really solid plans on how we're going to come and just protect the people in some extreme circumstances. So I see text in there. We want to hear from everybody. There's a chat in there about Machado Court and some of your thoughts out there, having experienced a serious fire a few years back. We want to hear from all of you. We want to make sure that this is your plan, and when we get it done, it's editable and can be changed as we learn together as a community on the best way to protect the WUI and all of the residents in the urban interface. So that's definitely a high goal for the overall process. And this was just an opportunity because we were aware, originally we weren't going to talk much about evacuation in this work soon, but we know it's top of mind for so many of you. And we wanted to share that there is something coming And I please know, Ms. Richardson, all of the work that you've done here in this presentation is not going to be lost. It's actually going to be very helpful, and it'll be built out. The main difference between a lot of the other programs and Zone Haven is the polygon concept. If Captain Wheeler, when he showed that slide, you can see the way a lot of the maps originally in Esri and in GIS and in general are done in a circular fashion, and it's very hard to figure things out based on streets and entry points and what have you. And the polygon solution has really allowed us to draw accurate maps. So depending on direction of travel of a flaming front, we can make those determinations based on the information on the ground in real time. So huge advancements coming, and I wish it was last summer, but no better time than now. I think that takes us to the end. Do we have any other questions in the chat, or anybody want to raise their hand?
If we do have a few questions in the chat, we're happy to answer them and post them online, but I want to get to the hands that have been raised for a while, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Stephen, I'm gonna unmute you.
Hi, my name's Stephen Schott, and I am the president of the Bailey Ranch HOA. One of the questions we have is how can we support you in your efforts in responding to the Hayward Boulevard feasibility study, proposing to reduce the number of lanes from 2 to 1 and add traffic circles in areas that are already subject to high congestion, like Hayward Boulevard and Bailey Ranch Road.
So right now, the best answer to that is to continue doing what you're already doing and monitoring it closely, because clearly you're aware of the issue. We have given our initial feedback about the lane change proposals and the calming devices. There's a lot of things that are problematic about it, one of which is a lot of what we've built out in Zone Haven is dependent on traffic going monodirectional, or having just emergency vehicle access coming up the hill and all other lanes coming down the hill. So that obviously changes things a lot, and we're going to be watching it closely. That being said, we've got a long history of the city taking our concerns into consideration and not really pushing back a whole lot. So I don't anticipate that it's going to happen in the current form that it has. We've given that feedback, and I'm optimistic that common sense will prevail, and we'll end up with probably some traffic calming devices, but that don't impact access and egress.
And the next question I had was, I'm curious if the fire department has a role in prospective changes to the neighborhood, like additional development and the things to improve evacuation routes. There's definitely a choke point between Skyline Drive and all the way up to Stonebrae, where it's reduced to 1 lane.
So the quick answer is a limited role. If a project meets California Fire Code current, then it can be built if it meets the code, the fire code, building code, and there's a lot of things that come into that: grade of the hillside or the road, and access. There's a lot of things that are played. If it makes it through a CEQA review, and it's simply on the fire department, then the only requirement is, and we can't deny a project based on it not being desirable. That's for the planning commission to do. We apply in the WUI, in the Wildland Urban Interface, we have considerable enhancements to the construction process in our Wildland Urban Interface ordinance, which requires a beefing up of building materials, sometimes sprinklers in the attic, enclosed soffits around the exterior of the house, no wood decks, things of that nature, which sometimes can be a deterrent to development because of the increased cost of construction in the hills, but we do not have the ability to deny a project based off of that. That being said, we do have, for instance, in the fire code, 96-foot cul-de-sacs in the wildland urban interface, hammerheads that accomplish a 96-foot turnaround. Things of that nature, we do have those those provisions. And sometimes we get accused, for lack of a better term, of killing a project because we require 96 feet in the wildland urban interface in particular, and most public works, including the county, require 80 feet cul-de-sac courts turnarounds. So we have that rub often enough. So it's not the first time. It's not our first rodeo on dealing with some of the access and egress stuff. I hope that answers your question, sir.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, I'm gonna unmute Kathy. Kathy, you can go ahead with your question.
Yes, Kathy. I live on the corner of Maud and D, and I just want to applaud Chief Contreras and also Captain Nicholson. A fabulous job. I appreciate it so much. I just want to address from the beginning that in the situation of the fires going forward, we know that there's natural hazards like wildfires, PG&E, thunderstorms, but we are really experiencing firework activity. The fire season is all year long now. The firework season is all year long now. So this is really impacting us. And I've been told that, the M80 is no longer there. It's now the M2000. In addition, the building too close to wildlands is not our responsibility. It falls on the shoulders of developers and planners. So they need to be aware of that. The situation with the firecrackers is that it's so prevalent every day, every night. And we need to try to take that into consideration and mitigate that. There is a shot spotter app, and I've been told by shot spotters that they have been working with the Hayward Police Department, but they don't have it adapted yet to fireworks. But that would be something to consider, that maybe in the future that shot spotter could be used to take care of fireworks and warn the sheriff's department or whatever about that. I would hope that the technology goes forward to cite the firework people that are doing that, because the people do not. Our people in our neighborhoods are reluctant to do that. But that's really a concerning situation. We've had fireworks thrown out of windows, out of cars, and started a fire in Fairview Avenue. And that activity is really concerning. And we could not, take care of it that way. So maybe someone could answer that to me. Yeah.
Definitely something that, and I know, the Fairview Fire District Board has been really pushing this issue hard, as the city of Hayward. And it really is, it's a regional issue. We hear it across every city, really, not just in our county, multiple counties. It's a huge problem. And it's understandable that people are concerned, like you, Kathy. It's something that can literally keep you up at night. And that yet very difficult to enforce. Really, the supply chain is where the enforcement has to happen to be
Exactly.
successful. Once they're in the resident's hand, the ability to enforce is really, really difficult because it's a constantly, literally a moving target. And you have, as the frequency picks up closer to July 4th, it gets obviously even harder. I think the efforts that the Fairview District has done, signs in places just kind of keep the honest. I think increased patrols are something that both the Sheriff's Office and the Hayward Police Department have significant plans for this year. I do also know that there's a few different task forces working on the supply chain side of things, both from the fire service and law enforcement working together from the fire marshal's office. And those have been our biggest success stories. I remember 2 years ago, there were 63,000 tons of fireworks confiscated in Hayward off of one of those type of enforcement efforts. And I think that's really what we're hoping to see the solution be, is to prevent them from getting into the residents' hands in the first place. We will stay on it. We will be diligent. Obviously, it's a law enforcement issue. Once somebody is breaking the law, we're there as suppression crews. We're not law enforcement and don't have the authority necessarily to engage. We do if the situation calls for it, but if it's at all dangerous, then we call law enforcement also. So we will continue on that, Kathy. We know it's a very big concern, and justifiably so, and hope to have some progress over the next few months and see some diminished fireworks.
And thank you, Chief Contreras. Can I unmute again?
Yes, please.
Okay, so the other concern is that we had a fire up on Upper D that was started by someone throwing out a cigarette butt. Okay, so we had another fire started by a contractor using a chainsaw on a limb in hot weather. And therefore, we see this fire danger all the time. And the problem is on D Street, Upper D Street, that when you get fire trucks going up there, there's no way for people to get down their cars or their trucks to evacuate. And they have to go on foot. And we don't have any sidewalks on D Street, Upper D Street. And I've been working with Public Works to get them to tell us when the design phase that's been approved will be approved. They don't tell us a date. So we have people that are probably going to have to evacuate on foot with no sidewalks. And some of those people are in wheelchairs. So tell me your thoughts on that.
Yeah, there's a lot of different spots like that throughout the community where access is not to modern standards. It wouldn't be approved today. So anytime we identify those areas, we're always an advocate to see increased public works kind of infrastructure improvements, and something we're strong advocates of. So in that particular case, we definitely are available to weigh in on what we would like to see from an access and egress standpoint, if there is consideration. Oftentimes the county does reach out to us for input on access and egress. It's just a matter of when they execute on the plans and make those changes happen. But we can definitely bird dog that particular one and keep you appraised of the information that I learned, Ms. Langley, if that would be helpful.
We're going to move to the next question. Dale, would you like to ask your question? Okay, we'll give Dale a couple minutes. Linda? Linda, do you still have a question?
I don't know if this is the right Linda. I had typed one in. I have a question about, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. You talked about wildfires, but I'm also concerned about, we live on the Hayward Fault. In a major earthquake, Mission Boulevard is probably not going to be available as an egress. And the only egress will be basically up to the Fairview area, which is very narrow now. What plans are you making that is going to address that, especially if it's during the day when schools are in session, Cal State's in session, or a weekend where you might have a golf tournament or something like that, where there's extra people all trying to get out at the same time?
Well, the best way to exit large numbers of people is to maximize the lanes. And that's what we were referring to. It's in all the system for evacuations that we are going live with is an all risk system. So regardless of the threat, it's a smart system that's going to be fed the latest information off of what's happening on the freeways, overall traffic routes. And that will inform our decisions in real time on what routes we open. And it's generally a law enforcement function to deal with how they get traffic moving, depending on where the impacted areas are. So much is an unknown. We're a huge step forward having Zone Haven to where we can communicate in real time in a systematic fashion through the AC alert system, but it's only as good as there are subscribers that are dialed into the system. One of the things you don't hear us talking a lot about is iPause, which is the instant text messaging. We will be in some capacity also using iPause over the course of time. But how some of those keys to the car get doled out over the course of time are still being determined, and some of the privacy rights and things on what can be sent out on an iPause alert will be coming hopefully in the near future. I think Dale's ready to unmute.
Hi, thank you for the second shot at this. Gentlemen, thank you for the presentation, the PowerPoint. Thank you for this opportunity for the workshop. Chief, thank you for stepping in so we could we ask our questions. I have a question. Besides Cindy's report, which we saw part of, there's a report by another Fairview person, Ray Soda, that makes specific recommendations as to how to improve egress, how to improve our ability to get out, mostly above Maud and above Kelly at Woodrow. Who do we contact to advance those suggestions? Who do we sit down with? At what point can we what's the next step in terms of articulating the issues that Ray's raised and the many others that some other people have about making plans on getting out of here?
Deputy Chief Vollmer is going to be the best point of contact for you, Dale. And he'll be bird dogging this and making sure that nothing slips through the cracks. Captain Wheeler and Captain Nicholson have specific roles in disaster preparedness, but from an overall responsibility standpoint, Deputy Chief Vollmer is your best route.
And I'm going to jump in, Dale, real quick. This is DC Vollmer, and
yeah, Chief.
I have a copy of that report that you were just talking about, and I'm actually going to be in a meeting tomorrow where we are going to be looking at addressing the pre-plans in the different zones in the WUI. So as we address those areas, I will definitely be bringing those considerations into play as we're looking at and assessing the pre-plans for those zones. So I will already be looking into those.
Great, and we'll stay in touch with you for other opportunities, future opportunities for citizen involvement.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
You're very welcome. And Chief, we're 15 minutes over time. If you want to, I guess, return everybody back to their lives for the rest of the evening, or if we want to take one more.
Just real quick, because there's a question about East Avenue Park and how concerned we are about East Avenue Park. And the overall Ward Creek drainage is the area that I think you're referring to. And we've got a series of projects going on right now at the bottom of Plunge Park, at the bottom of the creek, at Mission, just above Plunge Park, we've got a defensible space project that's going to be going on in there. It's also the reason why we put goats into Ward Creek, so that we don't damage the riparian nature by doing a bunch of abatement, but we put the goats into Ward Creek to clear the ladder fuels so that we don't damage the oak canopy, which is very healthy and safe and fire safe. But we eliminate the ground fuels, the sagebrush, the chaparral, the chamise, all the stuff that's down in the canyon, including the non-native species. We use the goats to accomplish that. So that was Diane Doran. And as far as getting children out of school if something happens, schools are generally, depending on the type of emergency, a shelter-in-place location where we will send resources to protect that, as opposed to trying to evacuate. At least in the immediate initial attack mode, we would send resources as a target hazard within that district. There would be automatically resources headed there for structure protection and life safety precautions to be taken. So with that, I want to thank everyone for participating, and thank you, Captain Nicholson and Captain Wheeler, for your hard work here, and Shauna Lee for making things happen behind the scenes, and Norma keeping everyone on point. This is kind of your team, and I hope for the community to see this group that's presenting here tonight as your team in the WUI safety of your neighborhoods as we move forward. This is not a one-time thing. It's not a one-year effort. This has been a buildup for the last few years, and we're going to stay on it until every resident knows their zone and feels comfortable that there's a good plan in place and that they've been heard, and we've met you where you are, and we've listened to your concerns and executed a satisfactory solution moving forward is our ultimate goal. So it's not going to be your last bite at the apple. To all of you, thank you for your participation. It really guides our decisions. We don't just say that. It helps us understand where the concerns are and gets us to a better product that you all can be proud of and feel good of about when we're all done. So it takes the whole village in this instance. So thank you all for your participation.